You have 30 seconds, Trinity, my adoptive mother, Eleanor Wallace hissed. Her voice was a tight wire of fury. Tell me why the presidential motorcade is turning onto our private road. She wasn't looking at me. She was staring past my shoulder, her perfectly manicured hand gripping the doorway of the mansion I had called home. Beside her, her son, Cypher, just looked confused. My designer suitcases, well, her old designer suitcases, were sitting in the gravel at my feet, right where she'd thrown them. My finger was hovering over the confirm pickup button on a rideshare app, my tears making blurry spots on the screen. My whole world had just ended. And now this. I don't know, I whispered. Don't you dare lie to me, she snapped. After everything we've done for you. The lead car, a heavy black sedan with official flags, didn't just slow down. It stopped, directly in front of me. It's strange, isn't it? How life can completely change in a single second. You spend years, decades even, believing one thing, only to have the entire foundation of your world ripped out from under you. You hope for justice, you pray for karma, you wish that just once, the people who hurt you would have to see the truth. How are you all doing today? I hope you're somewhere comfortable, maybe with a cup of tea. I hope the weather is good where you are, because this story is going to be a storm. My name is Trinity Vance. This is the story of how I went from being the grateful, invisible, adopted daughter of the wealthy Wallace family to being the woman they threw out like trash. And how, in my absolute lowest moment, the man they called a worthless nobody showed up to save me and brought the most powerful man in the world with him. I promise you, you are not going to want to step away from this. Every single one of you who has ever felt underestimated, overlooked, or betrayed, this one is for us. So hit that subscribe button, like this video and settle in. But before we get to the president, before the private jet, and before I understood what was really happening, let me take you back to the beginning. It all started when I was 16. That's when I was chosen. That's the word Eleanor Wallace always used. Not adopted. Chosen. Like a prize-winning orchid for her greenhouse. I was about to age out of the foster system. A quiet girl who got good grades and knew how to stay out of the way. The Wallaces, with their generational wealth and their name on museum wings, needed a new project. Their son, Cypher, was already away at a boarding school, and I think Eleanor was bored. I was so desperate for a family. I can't even tell you. I believe in storybook endings. I believed that if I worked hard enough, was quiet enough, was grateful enough, I could finally earn a permanent place at someone's table. I believed that adoption meant forever. I believed that a mother's love, even when I came too late, was unconditional. I believed that if I gave them every part of myself, they would, in return, at least see me. And I gave them everything. I was the perfect, grateful, invisible daughter. I deferred my own college plans. I'd gotten a full scholarship to help Eleanor with her charity galas. Trinity is just my right hand, she would say, patting my head. I simply couldn't manage without her. I managed the household staff. I organized Mr. Wallace's files. I even helped Cypher write his college essays, which really meant I wrote them for him. My only flaw, my deepest and most relatable flaw, was that I was a bottomless pit of need. I craved their approval, so much that I would have done anything. I didn't just ignore the red flags. I volunteered to help hang them. The first clue, the one that was so obvious, was hidden in plain sight. I was organizing Mr. Wallace's study, a job I did every month, and a letter fell from behind his desk. It was thick, official-looking, and addressed to me, Trinity Vance, from my old foster agency. It had been opened. When I brought it to Eleanor, her smile was thin. "Oh, that's just boring legal paperwork, dear. From your transition. I've already handled it. No need for you to worry your pretty little head about it." I was just so relieved, so grateful she was handling it. I didn't think to ask why mail addressed to me was in his private desk. I didn't ask why she'd opened it. I just thanked her and went back to work. But here's the thing you need to know. The piece of dramatic irony that makes it all so much worse. The Wallace's adoption of me wasn't charity. It wasn't even boredom. It was a business transaction. I found out later that my biological family, the parents I was told had died with nothing, were not that. They had left a significant trust. A complicated one. It was to remain locked until I turned 25, unless I was legally adopted by a family of good standing who would then manage the trust on my behalf. The Wallaces didn't save me. They acquired me. They acquired my trust, and I was just the container it came in. And that brings me to the ticking clock. My 25th birthday. The day the adoption agreement would legally expire. The day the trust would unlock and the management would end. The day I would finally get control. I was 24 years and 11 months old when it all fell apart. And it all fell apart because of Thomas. The final revelation, the one that recontextualizes everything. The man I met, the one they called a broke nobody. Thomas Winfield. He wasn't just some guy I met at the public library where I volunteered. He was the one person in the world who knew the truth. His father was the junior lawyer who had worked on my biological family's will, a man who'd been haunted by it for years. Thomas wasn't dating me despite my past. He had been searching for me because of it. The atmosphere in the house had been ice for a month. My 25th birthday was 3 weeks away. The Wallaces were getting tense. They'd been trying to get me to sign papers, just to consolidate your assets, dear. But I kept not doing it. Thomas had told me, "Don't sign anything, Trin. Not until your birthday. Promise me." And I had promised. Cypher, who had always hated me, discovered my relationship. Mother, I heard him sneering from the hallway, our little charity case as a boyfriend. Some broke programmer. He doesn't even own a car. He takes the bus. The confrontation was horrible. Eleanor and Mr. Wallace sat me down in the formal living room. "Trinity, we gave you everything," Eleanor started, her voice full of fake disappointment. "A home, a name, our name, and you repay us by sneaking around with that. His name is Thomas," I said, my voice shaking. "He's kind. He's smart. He's a distraction," Mr. Wallace said, not even looking up from his financial paper. "And an embarrassment. You will end it. Today. I don't know where it came from. Maybe it was Thomas. He made me feel real. He saw me, not the Wallace's accessory." "No," I said. That one small word broke the entire illusion. The politeness vanished. "No." Eleanor's laugh was a sharp, ugly sound. "You ungrateful little thing. We took you from nothing. You are nothing without us. You are a line item in our charity budget." It was fast after that. Cypher was already bringing my bags down. He looked happy for the first time in years. "You're making a terrible mistake, Trinity," Eleanor said, her face a mask of cold fury. "If you choose that boy over this family, you're out. And you will never be welcome back. You'll be back on the street where we found you. He's coming," I whispered, mostly to myself. I had called Thomas, crying, from the bathroom. I told him they were kicking me out. He'd gone quiet for a second and then said, "Stay right there. Don't move. I'm on my way." "Good," Cypher sneered, dropping the last bag at my feet, making the zipper burst. "Let him come pick you up in his bus pass." I sat on that suitcase on the gravel driveway for an hour. My phone died. I had nothing. No money, no one else to call. Just the clothes I was wearing. And then I heard it. It wasn't a bus. It was the low, unmistakable thrumming whir of an entire motorcade. Eleanor, Mr. Wallace, and Cypher all came to the front door, their faces confused, then annoyed, thinking I had caused some kind of scene. "You have 30 seconds, Trinity," Eleanor snapped. "Explain why the presidential motorcade is turning onto our private road." My heart was hammering. I had no idea. The lead car stopped. The back door opened. It wasn't Thomas. It was the President of the United States. He stepped out, adjusted his suit, and looked around at the opulent mansion. And then he opened the other back door. Thomas Winfield stepped out. My Thomas. But he wasn't in the worn-out jeans and the faded hoodie I loved. He was in a perfectly tailored dark suit. He looked powerful. He looked furious. He saw me, sitting on a broken suitcase, my face stained with tears. His eyes went from soft to ice. "Trinity," he said, and his voice carried in the sudden, absolute silence. "I'm so sorry I'm late. My boss insisted on coming." The President of the United States clapped Thomas on the shoulder. "Nonsense, Thomas. I told you when you agreed to be my chief counsel, your family's friends are my friends." He then turned, his gaze landing directly on Eleanor Wallace, who looked like she was going to be sick. "And I always protect my people," the president said, his voice friendly but with an edge of steel. "Mrs. Wallace, I presume? You have something that belongs to Miss Vance. We have a lot to talk about. Before I continue, I just want to say thank you for the incredible response so far. It's overwhelming. To know how many of you connect with this feeling of being underestimated, it means the world. Let's get back to that driveway." The air was so still you could hear a pin drop. Eleanor Wallace's face had gone a chalky white. Mr. Wallace, who I had never seen flustered, was visibly straightening his tie, a gesture of complete panic. Cypher just looked like his brain had short-circuited. "Thomas," I whispered, standing up, my legs shaking. I didn't even see the president. I just saw him. He strode past the security, past the motorcade, and didn't stop until he was standing right in front of me. He didn't touch me, not yet. He just looked at me, then at the broken suitcase, then at the 3 people standing frozen on the steps of their mansion. "Chief Counsel," the president said, his voice calm and curious, walking up to join us. "Is this the family you told me about? The ones who were so charitable?" "Yes, Mr. President," Thomas said, his voice low and vibrating with an anger I had never heard. "This is the Wallace family. And this," he said, finally reaching out and taking my hand, his grip firm and warm, "is Trinity Vance, the woman they've been managing for the last 9 years." Eleanor opened her mouth, but only a small squeak came out. "Mrs. Wallace," the president said, taking a step forward. He smiled, the same easy, charming smile from 1,000 news conferences. It did not reach his eyes. "You have a lovely home. I understand my chief counsel's fiancé has been staying with you." "Fiancé?" My head snapped toward Thomas. He gave my hand a quick, hard squeeze that said, "Trust me. Play along." Mr. Wallace finally found his voice. Mr. President, this is an incredible honor. We had no idea. There seems to be a misunderstanding." "Oh, I think there is," the president said, his smile tightening. "See, Thomas here is one of my most trusted advisors. Brilliant legal mind. He's been working on a personal project for a few years now, investigating a very complex trust fraud case. And all the threads, rather inconveniently, kept leading right here. To your doorstep. This was it. The moment I realized the man I'd been meeting for coffee, the man who I thought was a struggling programmer, the man I'd fallen in love with, was a complete stranger. And yet, he was the only person who had ever told me the truth. Let me go back. Let me show you how I met him. It was 6 months ago. I was at the public library, my one escape. I volunteered to read to children on Saturday mornings. It was the only part of my week that was just mine. I was in the biography section, hiding, because I was 20 minutes late getting back to Eleanor. She liked me to serve the drinks at her Saturday garden club meetings, and I just couldn't bear it. I was reaching for a book when a hand brushed mine. "Sorry," a man said, "but you're grabbing the wrong one. That biographer is terrible. You want this one." He handed me a different book. He was normal. That was the only word for it. Worn jeans, a t-shirt for a band I'd never heard of, and kind eyes. "Oh," I said. "Thank you." "You come here a lot," he said. It wasn't a question. "I'm Thomas. I work upstairs, trying to code an app that probably won't work." "Trinity," I said. "And I'm just here for the kids." "I've seen you," he said, and he smiled. "You're amazing with them. The one who cries, the little boy named Leo. You're the only one he'll read with." That was how it started. He saw me. He saw the one good, real thing about me, not the charity case, not the assistant. Just Trinity. We met for coffee. Then lunch. He'd text me, "Hey, how's the dragon lady?" And I'd laugh. I told him everything. I poured it all out. My fears, my loneliness. I told him about the Wallaces, how grateful I was supposed to be. I told him how Cypher would accidentally trip me in the hallway. I told him how Eleanor would praise me in public and then, in private, critique the way I breathed. "Why do you stay, Trin?" he asked me one day, his hand over mine on the sticky table of the diner. "Where would I go?" I whispered, and the honesty of that hung in the air. "They're my family. They saved me. I owe them everything." "No," Thomas said, his eyes intense. You don't. You don't owe anyone your life. Your life is yours. He was my secret, my one little piece of rebellion. And he was building me up, piece by piece. He'd bring me articles about scholarships, about programs for adult students. You're brilliant, Trinity, he'd say. You wrote Cypher's entire thesis. You could be teaching that class. And I was starting to believe him. What I didn't know was that our meeting wasn't an accident. Not even close. Thomas's father had been a junior lawyer at the firm that handled my biological family's estate. He was a good man, but he was new, and he'd been pushed around by the senior partners, the Wallace's lawyers. He'd spent 20 years haunted by what he'd seen. A powerful family adopting a 16-year-old girl just months before a massive trust was set to be transferred, a trust he was convinced they never intended her. On his deathbed, he made his son, Thomas Winfield, by then one of the sharpest young lawyers in D.C., promise to find me. To find Trinity Vance and get her justice. Thomas had spent years looking for me. When he finally found me, he saw how deep the Wallace's control went. He knew he couldn't just walk up, a powerful lawyer, and scare me off. He had to reach me, so he found out where I volunteered. He quit his high-powered D.C. job, took a sabbatical, which everyone assumed was political burnout, and moved into a small apartment nearby. He became the broke programmer so he could earn my trust, so I could save myself. The first betrayal, the one that set the stage for all of this, happened years before I met Thomas. It was the moment I should have seen the truth. I was 18. I had just graduated from high school, valedictorian. I had a full-ride scholarship to a prestigious university. I was going. I was so excited I could barely breathe. I brought the acceptance letter to Eleanor and Mr. Wallace. "Well, isn't that nice?" Eleanor said, barely glancing at it. "It's a full ride, Eleanor," I said, my voice trembling with pride. "They're paying for everything." "Trinity, dear," she said, sitting me down. Her voice was so kind, so reasonable. "We are so proud of you. But have you really thought this through?" "What do you mean?" "Well," she said, "university it's a big, lonely place. And you're so sensitive, so fragile. And I'm in the middle of planning the museum gala. I simply don't know how I'd manage without you. And Mr. Wallace has that big merger." She put her hand on mine. "Just 1 year. That's all I ask. Defer for 1 year. Help the family. We've given you so much. It's the least you could do. Just 1 year to show your gratitude." 1 year became 2. 2 became 4. My scholarship expired. I was 24 with no degree, no work history outside of Eleanor's assistant, and no future. I was completely, totally, hopelessly dependent on them. That was the first betrayal. They didn't just take my trust fund. They took my future. They took my confidence. They isolated me and called it love. And now, standing on that gravel driveway, holding the hand of the man I loved, a man who was a complete stranger, I was finally seeing the cage they had built for me. The president was still talking. "Mrs. Wallace," he said, "I'm afraid you're in some significant trouble. See, managing a trust is one thing. Liquidating its assets, moving them into your own private accounts, and hiding them offshore, well, that's another thing entirely. That's theft. And the IRS, they get very upset about that. Don't they, Thomas?" Thomas finally let go of my hand, but only to pull his phone from his suit pocket. "I'm just sending you the files now, Mr. President," Thomas said. "The Swiss accounts, the transfers, oh, and the recording." He looked at me, his eyes full of apology. "Trin, I'm sorry. I put a recording app on my phone when I knew they were going to confront you. I have the entire conversation from 20 minutes ago." He held up the phone, and my voice, small and broken, echoed in the driveway. "No," I heard myself say. And then Eleanor's, clear as a bell, sharp and ugly. "You ungrateful little thing. We took you from nothing. You are nothing without us. You are a line item in our charity budget." Mr. Wallace made a strangled sound. The president stopped smiling. He looked at Eleanor, and for the first time, I saw real, cold political fury. "A line item," he repeated. "Is that what you call her?" He looked at me, his gaze softening. "Trinity. Is it Trinity? My name is Adam. It's a pleasure to meet you. Thomas has told me a great deal about you. He gestured to the open door of his armored car. I believe you've had a difficult day. Why don't you let us get you somewhere safe? I looked at Thomas. I looked at the President of the United States. And then I looked at the three people who had been my entire world, their faces twisted in a new, unfamiliar terror. I took my first step. Wait, I said. My voice was hoarse. I walked past the President. I walked past Thomas. I walked right up to the bottom of the steps. I looked at Eleanor. You're right about one thing, I said. My voice was shaking, but it was getting stronger. I was an ungrateful little thing. I was ungrateful for myself. I let you tell me what I was worth. I let you take my future. Trinity, dear, she started, her voice a desperate, sugary plea. Let's not be hasty. This is all a misunderstanding. Was it a misunderstanding when you stole my scholarship? I asked. Was it a misunderstanding when you opened my mail? Was it a misunderstanding when you stole my inheritance? Cypher took a step back. Mr. Wallace looked like he was going to faint. Eleanor just looked at me with pure, undiluted hatred. The mask was gone. You never deserved it, she hissed, her voice low. You were trash. We gave you a palace. And you were too stupid to even be grateful. Thank you, I said. She blinked. What? Thank you. For finally telling the truth. I turned around. Thomas was watching me, and the pride in his eyes, it was like the sun coming out. Mr. President, I said. I'm sorry. My things they broke the suitcase. Son, the President said to a Secret Service agent. Get Miss Vance's belongings. All of them. The agent nodded. Sir, the jet is waiting. The jet. Thomas finally walked to me and put his arm around my shoulders. It's okay, Trin. I've got you. Thomas, I whispered as we walked toward the car. Where are we going? First, he said, helping me into the plush seat of the presidential sedan. We're going to get you the best lawyers in the country. Second, we're going to get your money back. All of it. The door shut with a heavy, final thud. As the car pulled away, I looked back. Eleanor, Mr. Wallace, and Cypher were standing there, frozen, as a convoy of black cars and two very unimpressed Secret Service agents started walking toward them. And third, I asked, as I finally let the tears come. Thomas took my hand and kissed the knuckles. And third, he said, I'm going to tell you the truth. Everything. And then, I'm going to ask you to forgive me for lying to you. The motorcade turned off the private road and onto the highway, leaving the Wallace mansion, my prison, behind us for good. I had no idea what was next, but for the first time in my life, I wasn't scared. I was furious, and I was free. We were in the sedan for less than 60 seconds before the questions started bubbling up, hot and acidic in my throat. The adrenaline was fading, and a chilling, terrifying clarity was taking its place. The President, Adam, was on his phone, his voice a low, calm murmur. Get me the Attorney General. No, now. And get the SEC on the line. I want to hold put on every known asset of Richard and Eleanor Wallace, effective immediately. Yes, every asset. And find Judge Harrison. I think she'll want to hear about this. He muted the call and looked at me, his expression softening from Commander-in-Chief to, well, just a kind man. Pardon the intrusion, Trinity. We're just making some calls. It's going to be a busy night for the Wallaces. Thomas, he said, not taking his eyes off me, explain. We have until we hit the airfield. An airfield. A jet. My head was spinning. Thomas turned to me in the plush seat. The security and the power of the car felt a million miles away from the man I thought I knew. Trinity, he said, and his voice was raw. He finally looked vulnerable. I lied to you. Every day. And I will spend the rest of my life apologizing for it. You're the President's chief counsel, I said. It came out as a flat, dead statement. I am not a broke programmer. No, not for a long time. You hunted me, I whispered, and the realization hit me hard. Our meeting, it wasn't an accident, was it? The library, the book. He shook his head, and I saw a flash of deep, genuine pain in his eyes. No, nothing was an accident. My father, he was the junior lawyer on your biological family's estate. He was a good man, Trinity, but he was young, and the Wallace's law firm, they buried him. He spent 20 years haunted by what they did. What did they do? I asked. They found a loophole. My father said your parents' will was ironclad. The trust was locked until your 25th birthday. No one could touch it. But the Wallaces, they found a way. A permanent guardianship that looked like an adoption. It gave them managerial control of your finances because you were a minor. They took you in at 16, just under the wire. He took a shaky breath. On his deathbed, my father made me promise. Find the girl, Thomas. Find Trinity Vance. Don't let them win. I've been looking for you for almost 4 years. I just stared at him. The man I'd shared my deepest secrets with. The man I'd cried to. The man I loved. So you became a person you thought I would trust. I became a person who could get close, he corrected gently. I knew who they were, Trin. I knew their power. If I had walked up to that mansion in a suit, a DC lawyer, what would they have done? I knew the answer. They would have hidden me. They would have told me you were the one after my money. They would have locked me away. Exactly, he said. They would have painted me as a predator, and you would have believed them. Because they were your family. I had to wait. I had to get you to see the truth. I had to wait until you were strong enough to want to leave. And I fell in love with you. That, he said, his voice cracking, was not part of the plan. And it's the truest thing I've ever said. I didn't know what to feel. Betrayed by him, or saved by him. The money, I said, my voice hollow. The inheritance. Is it a lot? The president, Adam, let out a short, dry laugh. He unmuted his phone. Mr. Attorney General, hold 1 second. He looked at me. Trinity, a lot doesn't cover it. Your biological parents weren't just well off. They were innovators. They sold a technology patent in the late 90s, one that is now in every single cell phone on the planet. He paused, letting it sink in. The Wallaces haven't just been living off your trust. The Wallaces have nothing. Everything they have, the mansion, the cars, the galas, the wings on museums, it's yours. They have been living off your fortune, your entire fortune, for almost 9 years. And that was it. That was the catastrophe. It wasn't that they had thrown me out. It wasn't that they had stolen from me. It was that I had been the one paying for my own prison. I paid for the clothes on Eleanor's back. I paid for Cypher's sports cars. I paid for the gravel on the driveway I was sitting on. A cold, hard, pure rage began to burn in my chest, and it was so hot it burned away the tears. What? I said, my voice no longer a whisper, did they do? The motorcade was slowing, turning off the highway. We pulled onto a private airfield, where a sleek white jet sat waiting, its engines already whining. This, Adam said, as the car stopped, is where I leave you. This jet, it belongs to a friend. It will take you to DC. Thomas has a team waiting for you. The door was opened by an agent. The president stepped out, then turned to me. He took my hand. Trinity, they thought you were a line item. Go show them what you're really worth. And don't worry, he added, with a wolfish grin. I'll be handling the public side of things. I think the press is going to be very interested in this story. He and his team got back in the sedan, and the motorcade sped away. It was just me and Thomas, standing in the bright lights of the airfield. This is it, Trin, he said. Point of no return. They didn't adopt me, did they? I asked, as we walked toward the plane. Thomas stopped, his face grim. No, that was the biggest lie. The adoption was a legal fiction. The permanent guardianship, the one that gave them control, it expires. On your 25th birthday. Which is in 3 weeks, he finished. That's why they were panicking. That's why they tried to get you to sign those papers. They're the consolidation papers. I breathed, the memory hitting me. They weren't for consolidation, Thomas said, his voice laced with venom. They were a new contract, an agreement that, as an adult, you were willingly signing over management of all your assets back to them. Permanently. They were trying to trick you into giving it all back, right at the finish line. The lies, layer upon layer of them. My whole life. I stopped at the bottom of the jet stairs. I looked at Thomas, the man who had lied to me every single day to tell me a truth I couldn't have handled. Can I trust you? I asked. Right now. Can I trust you? My life is yours, Trinity, he said simply. My career is yours. My heart is yours. What I did it to get you to the staircase. Where you go from here, that's up to you. But I am with you. All the way. I looked at him, the man I had fallen in love with in a dusty library, and the man who was the chief counsel to the president, and I realized they were the same person. A man who fights for what is right, no matter the cost. I nodded. Once. Good. I turned and walked up the steps. The inside of the jet was all cream leather and polished wood. I strapped myself into a seat that was worth more than any car I'd ever ridden in. Thomas sat across from me. You said you have a team waiting, I said, as the engines roared, pressing me back into the seat. The best forensic accountants in the country, he confirmed. And a legal team that makes sharks look friendly. Good, I said, looking out the window as the ground fell away. Tell them to find everything. Every receipt, every hidden account, every charitable donation they made with my name on it. I looked back at him, and I didn't recognize the cold, hard woman in the reflection of the window. I don't just want my money back, Thomas. I want my life back. I want them to have nothing. Just like they left me. The next 3 weeks were a blur. We landed in D.C. and were driven to a secure penthouse. My penthouse, as it turned out, one of my properties, bought with my money and held in a shell corporation by the Wallaces. Thomas's team had already secured it. The pressure was immediate and crushing. The team of lawyers and accountants, led by a sharp woman named Alani, descended. We worked 20-hour days in a war room set up in the penthouse's massive dining room. And the deception, the layers of it, were staggering. They didn't just spend it, Trinity, Alani said on day 3. She pointed to a complex chart on a huge screen. They moved it. They built a house of cards. They used your trust to buy art, then used the art as collateral for loans, then donated the art to their own foundation at an inflated value, getting a massive tax write-off, while keeping the loan money. It's brilliant. And it is highly illegal. While my team was digging, the Wallaces were fighting back. They were not going down easy. They hired a brutal PR firm. Suddenly, I was the story. Ungrateful foster child, influenced by power-hungry D.C. lawyer, attempts to steal family fortune. My face was everywhere. A bad picture of me from high school, looking sullen. They painted me as unstable, a disturbed girl they had tried to save, who had now turned on them. They portrayed Thomas as a predator, a government official abusing his power to influence a vulnerable young woman. They're good, I whispered, watching Eleanor on a news program, crying crocodile tears about how she prayed for my recovery and just wanted her daughter to come home. They're desperate, Thomas said, his hand on my shoulder. But we're better. The deception wasn't just financial. It was personal. We found Eleanor's private journals. She didn't write in them. She kept logs. Trinity 18. Scholarship secured. Convinced her to defer. Cost. 1 speech about family. Savings. $280,000 tuition. Trinity 20. Showed interest in local art class. Accidentally spilled bleach on her portfolio. Risk of outside influence neutralized. Trinity 24. Met TW, surveillance attached. Suspect gold digger. Must accelerate 25th birthday protocols. She had been having me followed. She knew about Thomas before Cypher ever discovered us. The confrontation, it was a setup. They were going to throw me out, paint me as the one who left. So when my birthday came, they could say I had abandoned my loving family and was unfit to manage my own affairs. The pressure was mounting. The Wallace's lawyers were filing motions, trying to get a judge to declare me mentally incompetent. They were trying to trap me. They sent Cypher. He showed up at the penthouse, claiming he just wanted to talk. Thomas and the security team were ready for him. We let him in. Trin, he said, trying to look sad. It didn't fit his face. This is crazy. Mom and Dad, they're a mess. They miss you. This lawyer, this Thomas, he's lying to you. He's just after the money. Come home. We can fix this. Fix what, Cypher? I asked, my voice calm. I've been coached by the lawyers. You know all this. It's just a big misunderstanding. Dad said he's willing to give you a generous allowance. You can have your own apartment. Whatever you want. Just call off the lawyers. An allowance. I said, For my own money. His face twitched. The mask slipped. Look! You were happy, okay? We gave you a good life. You had nothing. You should be on your knees thanking us. You're just not smart enough to manage this stuff. You never were. Thank you for coming, Cypher, I said, standing up. Security will show you out. You're making a mistake, he yelled as the agents moved in. Mom was right about you. You're nothing but trash. No, Cypher, I said as the door closed. I'm the one who paid your tuition. But his visit was a deception, too. While he was distracting us, the Wallace's lawyers were at a private hearing, using my refusal to see family as evidence of my instability and Thomas's coercive control. We were losing. They were good at this. They had been doing it for years. We're missing something, Alani said, late one night, her face pale from exhaustion. We have 90% of the puzzle, but they're still moving money. There's a leak. There's an account we can't find. It's the primary one, the one they're using to fund this fight. And if we can't find it, they'll outlast us. They'll drain us, using our own money. We were trapped. Every legal move we made, they countered. The pressure was suffocating. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't eating. Thomas was frantic, caught between his job, his love for me, and the fight of his life. And then, the letter came. The one that should have saved me 9 years ago. A clerk from the old foster agency, hearing the news stories, had dug through the archives. It was the letter I'd seen in Mr. Wallace's study. The one Eleanor had handled. It wasn't legal paperwork. It was a personal letter from my mother. My biological mother, who I'd been told died in childbirth. She wasn't dead. Not then. She had been in a long-term care facility, suffering from a degenerative illness. She had lived until I was 17. She had written me hundreds of letters. The Wallaces hadn't just stolen my money. They had stolen my mother. They'd intercepted every letter. They'd let her die alone, thinking her daughter had forgotten her. That was the final piece of evidence I should have seen. The file contained one last thing. A note from my mother's nurse, attached to the final letter. P.S. She made me promise, if you ever read this, to tell you to ask about the Dove's Nest. She said it was your secret place. It's where she put the key to everything. I looked at Thomas, my blood turning to ice. The Dove's Nest, I whispered. It was a jewelry box. A little ceramic dove. It was the only thing I had from before. Eleanor said it was childish and gaudy. She put it in storage when I was 16. Where is it? Thomas asked, his voice urgent. It's in their house, I said. It's in the attic. And I know exactly where. My world, which I thought had already been shattered, was just obliterated. The penthouse, with its sterile, multi-million-dollar views, suddenly felt like a tomb. Alani and the legal team had found the foster agency clerk. The man had kept his own private, off-site copies of everything, terrified of the Wallace's power for years. He had given them the entire file. It wasn't a file. It was a box. A heavy, legal-size box full of letters. Letters that smelled of old paper and cheap hospital stationery. My mother's letters. Trinity, you don't have to do this right now, Thomas said, his voice thick. He was standing by the window, his back to me, his shoulders rigid with a fury I could feel across the room. I do, I whispered. I sat on the floor, the box in front of me. Alani and the team had discreetly left the room. It was just me and Thomas, and the ghost of the mother I never knew. I opened the first one. The handwriting was a weak, spidery script, but it was real. Asterisk, my dearest Trinity. They told me you were safe today. A good family. Wealthy. They said they would give you everything. I pray they are kind. I pray they let you keep the dove. I wish I could be there. I wish I could see you. I love you. Don't you ever forget that. Mom. Asterisk. I choked on a sob. I ripped open another. And another. They were a diary of my stolen life. My Trinity. Happy 17th birthday. I saw a girl in the hall today with dark hair like yours, or at least, how I remember it. I wonder if you're driving. I wonder if you have a first boyfriend. I wonder if you ever think of me. The nurse, Ilara, says she posted the letter. I hope you get this one. I hope you know I am fighting. I am fighting to see you. My God. My 17th birthday. I remembered it. Eleanor had told me my biological mother was a worthless addict who died at my birth. I had spent the entire day in my room, crying, and she had let me. She had comforted me, all while this letter was probably sitting in her husband's desk. Thomas finally came over and sat on the floor, his back against the couch. He didn't touch me. He just sat with me, a silent, furious guardian. Then I got to the end of the box. The last few letters weren't from my mother. They were from the nurse. Ilara. Miss Vance. I am so sorry. Your mother, she fought so hard. But she made me promise. The family that took you, they sent a letter back to the hospital, to me. Just once. It was from their lawyers. It said you were thriving, but emotionally fragile, and that any contact from your unstable biological mother would jeopardize your recovery. They ordered me to stop. They threatened me. The paper was shaking in my hands. Thomas took it from me, his face turning to stone as he read it. They didn't just block her. I gasped, the air ripping from my lungs. They told her I didn't want her. No, Trin. She died thinking I was fragile. She died thinking I'd replaced her. She died thinking I didn't love her. This was the devastation. This was the true, final, unimaginable cruelty. The money was nothing. This was my soul. They had hollowed it out. They had let my mother die alone, thinking her only child had forgotten her. I broke. I didn't just cry. I screamed. It was a raw, animal sound of pure, bottomless grief. It was the scream of a 16-year-old girl who needed her mom. It was the scream of a 24-year-old woman who had just found out she was an orphan all over again. Thomas didn't try to calm me. He just moved in front of me, put his arms around me as I collapsed, and let me soak his shirt, his own tears of rage hot on my hair. I'll kill them, he choked out, his voice a low growl. Trinity, I swear to God, I will end them for this. I wept until I had nothing left, just a hollow, empty, cold space in my chest. I pulled back, my face numb. The nurse, I said, my voice dead. Ilara, the one who wrote the last note. Thomas was already on his phone, typing, sending a message to Alani's team. Find her. Now. I looked at the last piece of paper in the box. The nurse's note. P.S. She made me promise, if you ever read this, to tell you to ask about the dove's nest. She said it was your secret place. It's where she put the key to everything. The key, I breathed. The dove's nest. It's in the attic, I said, my voice flat, all emotion burned away. I was just a wire now, pulled tight. In the Wallace mansion. In the attic. It's my old jewelry box. Eleanor, she put it in storage because it was gaudy. Trinity, Thomas said, standing up, his face all business now. The lawyer was back. The mansion is problematic. It's part of the asset freeze. We can't just go in. They are still living there, aren't they? I said, the coldness spreading. Yes, he ground out. The judge granted them a temporary stay. They can't sell anything. They can't move assets. But they aren't homeless. Yet. Good, I said, standing up. My legs were shaky, but my resolve was steel. Then get a judge. Get a court order. Tell them I am retrieving my deceased mother's personal effects. Tell them I am retrieving the only thing I have of hers. Tell them whatever you have to. I am getting that box. It took 24 hours. 24 hours of legal warfare. The Wallace's lawyers fought it, of course. Harassment, they called it. A vindictive, unstable woman. But Thomas was better. He didn't use the letters. He didn't give them that. He was smarter. He simply argued that an item of deep sentimental and zero monetary value, belonging to the plaintiff and obtained prior to her illegal guardianship, was being held hostage. The judge, who had just been given let's say, a nudge from the president's office, agreed. He granted it. A court order. For me, Thomas, and 2 federal marshals to enter the Wallace property and retrieve one item. The drive back to that house was surreal. This time, I wasn't in the back of a motorcade. I was in a black SUV, sandwiched between Thomas and a marshal who looked like he was carved from granite. We pulled up the long gravel driveway. And they were there, Eleanor and Richard, standing on the steps, just like before. But this time, they didn't look powerful. They looked old. Their faces were gray with stress. Eleanor's perfect hair was slightly out of place. Richard's suit was rumpled. "You dare!" Eleanor shrieked as I stepped out of the car. The mask was completely gone. This was the real her. "You dare come back here with these goons?" "Ma'am," the first marshal said, his voice a bored monotone. "We have a court order. We're not goons. We're U.S. Marshals. Miss Vance is here to retrieve one item, specified as a ceramic jewelry box, from the attic. You will let us in." Richard Wallace just stared. He looked broken. But Eleanor, her eyes widened. And for a split second I saw it. Fear. She knew the box. She hadn't just thought it was gaudy. She knew it. She knew it was the one thing that connected me to my past. And she had buried it. "There's nothing in that attic but junk," she snapped, trying to regain control. It's just trash." "Then you won't mind if I go look?" I said, my voice echoing in the too quiet air. I walked right past her up the steps. I didn't look at her. I didn't look at Richard. I walked into the grand foyer, my heels clicking on the marble floor I had paid for. "The attic is this way," I said to the marshals. "We'll wait here, ma'am," the marshal said, his eyes locked on Eleanor and Richard. "Make sure no one interferes." Thomas put his hand on the small of my back. "Go." "I'm right here." I walked up the main staircase, up the second, to the small, hidden door that led to the attic. It was just as I remembered. Dusty. Cold. Full of things Eleanor Wallace wanted to forget. Old portraits. Broken furniture. And my life. My old school trunk. My high school diploma. My valedictorian medal, which she'd forgotten to frame. And there in the corner, under a dusty sheet, was a small, unassuming wooden box. Inside it, my heart stopped. The dove's nest. It was a small, cheap, ceramic dove, its wings spread. I hadn't seen it in 9 years. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely open it. Inside, there was no key. There was a small, old-fashioned USB drive. A simple 4-gigabyte stick. And underneath it, a small, folded piece of paper in my mother's weak, spidery handwriting. Asterisk my Trinity. If you are reading this, I am gone. And it means they lied. I am not dead in this note. But I am dying. And I am not poor. They can steal the money, my love. They can steal our time. But they cannot steal the proof. This drive, it is a backup of everything. The original patent files. A copy of the original will, the one the Wallaces buried. And a video, my last message to you. My last will and testament. They can steal the money, but they cannot steal my invention. This is your key. This is your truth. I love you. I have always loved you. Go get them, baby. Mom asterisk. My invention? My mother. I grabbed the drive. I grabbed the note. I grabbed the dove's nest. I ran down the stairs. Eleanor and Richard were at the bottom, their faces tight. Find your junk. Eleanor sneered. I just looked at her. I held up the small ceramic dove. Tell me, Eleanor, I said, my voice so quiet everyone strained to hear. Do you even know what this is? She just stared, her face confused. You thought my mother was nothing, I said. You thought she was worthless. You stole her money, but you were so arrogant you never even bothered to look up what she did. I held up the USB drive. This is a key, Eleanor. A key to what? Richard croaked. To everything, I said. You didn't just steal a trust fund. You stole a patent. You've been collecting royalties on an invention that isn't yours. Eleanor's face. I will never forget it. The blood drained from it. She knew. She finally, truly knew. It was over. Thomas, I said, walking past them and out the front door into the sunlight. Get Alani. We need to watch a video. The silence in the SUV on the way back to the penthouse was so thick it was almost hard to breathe. I held the small ceramic dove in one hand and clutched the USB drive in the other. It was warm. It felt like a heartbeat. Thomas was on the phone, his voice a low, urgent hum. Alani, clear the war room. No one except you. Get the tech team ready to secure a drive. This is it. This is the one. Yes. Yes, I'll tell him. We're 5 minutes out. He hung up and looked at me. His eyes weren't on me. They were on the drive in my hand. That was Alani, he said, his voice rough. The president is invested. He's waiting for our call. He's cleared his schedule. I just nodded. I couldn't speak. I felt like if I opened my mouth, that scream from the night before would just come out again and never stop. We got to the penthouse. Alani was waiting by the elevator, her face pale, her eyes electric. She didn't say a word, just nodded and led us to the war room. The big screens were all off. There was just one laptop on the massive empty table with a single, secure USB hub attached. "It's clean," she said. "Air-gapped. Nothing in, nothing out." I walked to the table. Thomas stood behind me, his hands on the back of my chair. Alani stood next to me. I put the dove's nest on the table. Then I plugged in the drive. A single folder appeared on the screen. It was titled, "For Trinity." Inside, there were 3 files. patent_original_XA 221b.pdf. last_will_and_testament_marth_vance.pdf. play_me_last.mp4. My God! Alani breathed, her hand flying to her mouth. XA 221b. Trinity, do you know what that is? I shook my head, my eyes glued to the screen. It's the core patent for lithium-ion battery shielding, Alani said, her voice shaking. It's in everything. Phones, laptops, electric cars, everything. We thought your family's money was old tech. This is Trinity. This isn't a trust fund. It's an empire. My mother, my quiet, sick mother, who I thought was nothing, she had invented. Play the video, I said, my voice a rasp. Alani's hand hovered over the mouse. Trinity, are you sure? We should have legal review. Play the video. She clicked it. The screen flickered, and then she was there. She wasn't the sick, weak woman from my imagination. She was in a hospital bed, yes. She was painfully thin, and her hair was patchy. But her eyes, they were bright. They were brown like mine. And they were furious. She was looking right at me. "My dearest Trinity," she said, her voice weak but clear as a bell. "If you are seeing this, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I failed you. I tried to hang on. I tried so hard." A tear rolled down her cheek, and she wiped it away with an angry hand. "But we don't have time for that. I am Martha Vance, and I am of sound mind and body, well, mostly sound mind." A small, pained smile flickered. "And I am not dead yet, but I am being silenced. A family, a powerful family, has taken you, and they are trying to steal everything from us." Thomas's hands gripped my shoulders so hard it hurt. "They think I'm a fool," she said, her voice growing stronger. "They think I'm just a sick woman with some old money. They don't know that I am the money. That patent, XA 221b, it's mine. I created it. My husband, your father, he was the business side, but I was the brain." She held up a piece of paper to the camera. It was a legal document. "This," she said, "is the original patent filing. And this," she held up another, "is the original will. The one the Wallace's lawyers, those vultures, buried. It states, I state, that 100% of my estate, including all current and future royalties from my patents, goes to you, my daughter, Trinity. Not to a trust, not to be managed. To you. They buried it. They filed a forged will. A charitable trust to be managed by your new guardians. They are thieves, Trinity." She was coughing now, a deep, painful rack. She took a sip of water. I've put everything on this drive," she panted. "The originals. The proof. The accounts in Switzerland where I put the first royalties, the ones they never found. The dove's nest, baby. Our secret place. I told them. I told Alara. The key was inside. They thought it was a bank key. They searched my room, the fools. They searched the box. But they were looking for gold. They didn't realize the key, it was data." Her eyes locked on the camera. On me. "Go get them, baby," she whispered, her voice full of a love so powerful it reached across the years and punched the air from my lungs. Don't let them win. Don't let them have our life. My beautiful girl. I am so proud of." The video cut to static. She was gone. No one spoke. The only sound was my own ragged breathing. Alani was openly weeping, wiping her face. Thomas. Thomas was just a block of stone behind me. Get it? I said, my voice a dead thing. Get them all. That video, it was the bomb. Alani and the team worked through the night. The Dove's Nest accounts, as my mother called them, contained millions. Untouched. But more than that, the patent, the royalties the Wallaces had been collecting, it wasn't millions. It was billions. They didn't just steal from you, Trinity, Alani said, her face gray as she looked at the numbers. They stole from everyone. The government. Their business partners. They've been living a lie, so big it has its own zip code. This isn't just a lawsuit. This is the end of their entire world. A new lawsuit was filed. This one wasn't for fraud. It was for everything. Racketeering. Patent theft. Forgery. We filed an emergency injunction. We had the video. We had the original will. We had the patent. The judge saw it. And in one 10-minute hearing, it was over. All assets of Richard and Eleanor Wallace were frozen. Not just the ones we knew. All of them. The mansion was seized. The cars. The foundations. Their bank accounts were locked. They were, in a single pen stroke, left with nothing but the rumpled clothes on their backs. I had won. And that's when the real descent began. I thought that would be it. That they would just be gone. But I was wrong. The Wallaces were cornered. They had lost their money. They had lost their home. They had nothing left to lose. And that made them more dangerous than ever. They couldn't fight me on the money. The proof was absolute. The press, which had been painting me as a vindictive foster child, suddenly had the video will. The story flipped. I was the orphan princess, the brilliant heiress, stolen and abused. My mother was a genius. The Wallaces were monsters. It was perfect. It was everything I wanted. But they had one move left. One. If they couldn't attack me, they would attack the man who saved me. A story dropped 2 days after the injunction. Not on a major network. On a sleazy, high-traffic political gossip blog. The headline was brutal. Chief Counsel's honey trap. Did Thomas Winfield use a vulnerable heiress and the president to steal billions? It was brilliant. And evil. The story, fed by an anonymous source close to the Wallace family, wasn't about the Wallaces' guilt. They admitted that. They spun it. They claimed, yes, they had mishandled my trust. But that Thomas Winfield had known about the patent all along. That he hadn't found me by accident. He had targeted me. That he had faked an entire relationship, slowly poisoning my mind against the only family I'd ever known. That he had coerced me, a mentally fragile woman, using his power and charm. And the worst part, that he had illegally used the power of the presidency, bringing Adam to the house to intimidate the Wallaces and secure his control over my fortune. That he wasn't my savior. He was just a smarter thief. I was in the penthouse, my new, empty, beautiful home, when I read it. I felt the blood drain from my face. Thomas, I whispered. He was across the room, on the phone with the president's press secretary. His face was white. Yes, I understand. No, sir. It's a complete fabrication. Yes. I'll be there. He hung up the phone. He didn't look at me. Thomas, what's going on? They're good, Trin, he said, his voice hollow. They're so good? What is it? The president. Adam, he's in a box. Thomas said, finally looking at me, and his eyes were full of a despair that terrified me. The press, it's a firestorm. The opposition is calling for a special investigation. Abuse of power. Weaponization of the Justice Department. It's not just about me anymore. It's about him. This was their rock bottom. This was my rock bottom. They had lost everything, so they had decided to take the one thing I had. The one thing that mattered. My trust. My love. My Thomas. Thomas, I said, walking toward him. We'll fight this. We have the letters. We have my mother's video. We'll prove. Prove what? He snapped, and I flinched. Prove that I did lie to you? Prove that I did hunt you? Prove that I did create a fake persona to get close to you? It's all true, Trinity. They're just twisting the reason. No. Yes. The Wallace's story, it's 90% true. They just changed the motive. And in politics, motive doesn't matter. Only the optics. His phone buzzed. He looked at it. It was from Adam. "I'm suspended," he whispered. "Indefinitely. Pending a full ethics investigation. I'm off the case, Trinity. I'm off everything." He was gagged. He was sidelined. And I was alone. Again. I was standing in a billion-dollar penthouse, the sole owner of a technology empire. I had all the money. I had all the power. And I was completely, utterly isolated. The Wallaces had been removed, only to be replaced by a new set of walls. Suspicion. Was Thomas, was he? No. I wouldn't. But the doubt, it was a cold, tiny seed. And it had been planted. That was the darkest descent. Not the loss of money, but the loss of certainty. And then Alani called. "Trinity," she said, and her voice was funeral low. "We have a problem. The Wallaces, they've made an impossible choice. For you." "What?" "Their lawyers just sent a new offer. They will publicly recant everything they said about Thomas. They will issue a full, public apology to him and to the president. They will save his career." My heart leaped. "But what do they want?" "You," Alani said. "You have to drop the criminal charges. You let them off. You let them walk away. You keep the money, you keep the patent, and you let them go." I sank onto the floor. This was it. The impossible choice. I could have justice, or I could have love. I could destroy the Wallaces, get the justice my mother and I deserved, and in doing so, I would destroy Thomas's career and prove their story right. That he was a manipulator. Or I could save Thomas. I could save the man I loved. I could save the president who had helped me. But I would have to let the people who killed my mother and destroyed my life go free. I would have to let them win. The penthouse, which had felt like a war room and then a sanctuary, now felt like a cage. My cage. I had all the money in the world, and I was trapped by an impossible choice. I was completely, utterly alone. Thomas couldn't see me. He couldn't even call. The second the Wallace's offer came in, Alani had put him on a strict legal firewall. If he advised me in any way, to save him or to not save him, it would be seen as collusion, coercion. It would prove the Wallace's story. He was benched, suspended, gagged, and locked away, probably going insane in his own apartment. Even the president was silent. The entire investigation into him hung on my decision. The choice was simple. A. Destroy the Wallaces. Send them to prison. Get justice for my mother's stolen life and my own. And in doing so, destroy Thomas's career, cripple the president, and spend the rest of my life wondering if they were right, if I had been manipulated by a man who was just a smarter thief. B. Save Thomas. Save Adam. Accept the Wallace's apology. Keep my money, my love, and my new life. But let them walk. Let the people who let my mother die alone, who stole my entire childhood, get away with it. Let them go free. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I just sat in the dark, in that vast, empty penthouse, staring at the lights of a city. I was 24 years old, a billionaire, and I was just as lost as I was on that gravel driveway. I did the only thing I could. I opened my laptop, and I played the video. I watched my mother. I watched her rage, her love, her brilliance. "Go get them, baby," she whispered. What did that mean? What did get them truly mean? Did it mean prison? Did it mean destroying them as they had destroyed me? I watched it again, and again. On the 10th viewing, I stopped focusing on the words. I focused on her. She was an innovator, a creator, a builder. The Wallaces, they were destroyers. They were parasites. I was my mother's daughter. My mother hadn't just been sad. She'd been angry. But her final act wasn't one of pure destruction. It was one of creation. She had created that drive. She had built a fortress of truth. And then I remembered her nurse, Ilara, the other person in this story who had known her. I grabbed my phone. It was 3 a.m. I called Alani. She picked up on the first ring. "Trinity, find Ilara," I said, my voice hoarse. "The nurse. I don't care what it takes. I don't care where she is. Find her. I need to talk to her. Now." 24 hours later, my new private jet, the first thing I had bought with my own money, landed in Portland, Oregon. Alani's team had found her. Ilara was retired, living in a small, neat condo. I went alone. No lawyers. No Thomas. Just me. When she opened the door, she looked like she'd seen a ghost. She was older, frail, but her eyes were sharp. You, she breathed, her hand going to her heart. You're Martha's girl. My God, you have her eyes. May I come in, Elara? I sat on her floral sofa, my hands clutched in my lap. They sent me your letters, I said, my voice shaking. You were with her. At the end. The Wallaces, they've made me an offer. I laid it all out. The choice. Justice or love. Prison or freedom. Elara just listened, her face grim. I have to know, I whispered, the tears finally coming. My mother. She said, go get them. Does that mean I should destroy them? Is that what she would want? Elara was quiet for a long time, looking at a picture on her mantel. It was a picture of her and my mother sitting in a hospital garden. My mother was laughing. Your mother, Elara said, her voice thick. She was the most brilliant person I ever met, and the most stubborn. She was so angry. At them. At the world. At her own body. 4 weeks, that's all she talked about. Prison. Ruin. Vengeance. My heart sank. So choice A. But then, Elara said, turning to me, her eyes kind. About a week before she made that video, she changed. Changed how? She was quiet, and she was at peace. I asked her what was wrong. She just smiled. She took my hand. Elara's voice dropped, as if reciting a sacred text. She said, Elara, vengeance is a prison. You spend your whole life locked in a cell with the person you hate. They tried to lock my daughter in a cage of lies. I won't let her build a new one for herself out of hate. Elara looked at me, her eyes boring into mine. She told me, they can't build anything, Elara. They can only take. The way I win, the way Trinity wins, is by building what they try to tear down. Living is the best revenge. She didn't want you to destroy them, child. She wanted you to live, and to be free. The truth hit me. It wasn't a choice between A and B. It wasn't justice or love. My mother didn't want me to be a destroyer. She wanted me to be a builder. The Wallaces, they didn't fear prison. Not really. They were arrogant. They'd probably run the place. What do they fear? They feared being nothing. They feared being poor. They feared being irrelevant. They feared me. Dropping the criminal charges, it wasn't letting them go. It was freeing myself from them. It was taking my hand out of the trap. And I realized I didn't have to just accept their offer. I could rewrite it. I flew back to D.C. The sun was coming up. I felt clean. For the first time, I called Alani from the jet. I've made my choice, I said. Trinity, what is it? She asked, her voice full of dread. It's choice C, I said. Call the Wallaces' lawyers. Tell them I accept their terms. I will not pursue criminal charges. Trinity, no. On one condition, I interrupted. They will deliver their public apology. The one that clears Thomas and the president. Okay, a press release? We can draft. No, I said, and I felt a cold, hard smile touch my lips. Not a press release. They will deliver their apology in person, at a time and place of my choosing. And Alani, I'm going to need you to plan a party. A party? Oh, yes. My 25th birthday is next week. It's also the launch of the new Martha Vance Foundation for Innovation. I'm going to need a very big ballroom. And a lot of press. I went to Thomas's apartment. I had my driver wait. He opened the door. He looked awful. He hadn't shaved. He was still in yesterday's clothes. He looked like he'd been through a war. Trinity, he breathed. He looked terrified. They're not going to prison, I said simply. He just stared at me. You chose me, he whispered. No, I said, and his face fell. I stepped inside and put my hands on his chest. I didn't choose you over justice. I chose us. I chose my future. My mother didn't want me to be a jailer, Thomas. She wanted me to be free. He just looked at me, confused. I'm not letting them go, I said. I'm reassigning them. I'm taking away their last weapon. I'm saving you. I'm saving Adam. And I'm going to do it in front of everyone. Trinity, what are you? What's the plan? The plan, I said, is that you need a shower and your best suit. Because in 1 week, we're throwing a party. And we have some very special guests of honor. He finally understood. The fog of despair left his eyes, replaced by a slow-burning awe. "You're not just going to beat them, are you?" he said. "No," I said, leaning up to kiss him. "I'm going to erase them. Then, I'm going to build my mother's legacy on the ground where they used to stand." This was the new choice. Not to stay broken, not to just fight back. It was time to win. The night of the gala was the night I was reborn. It was my 25th birthday. The day I was supposed to be a line item. Instead, I was the host. The ballroom of the National Museum, a museum that no longer had a Wallace wing, was filled with the most powerful people in the country. Senators, journalists, tech billionaires, and in the seat of honor at the main table, President Adam, and next to him, Ilara, the nurse, who I'd flown in and dressed in a custom-made gown. I was not in the penthouse. I was in a private suite, getting ready. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Thomas asked. He was standing behind me, his hands on my shoulders, looking at my reflection in the mirror. My God, he was beautiful. He was back in his element, a sharp, dark suit, his confidence restored. He was no longer suspended counsel Thomas. He was my Thomas, and he was terrified for me. It's brutal, Trinity. You don't have to. I looked at my reflection. The girl on the gravel driveway was gone. In her place was a woman I barely recognized, but one my mother would have. My dark hair was sleek. I wore a deep, emerald green dress. On my collar, I wore a small, diamond-encrusted pin. A dove. "They made their choice, Thomas," I said, my voice low and calm. "They chose to attack you. They chose to call my mother nothing. They chose to call me trash. Brutal is what they've earned. They're not going to prison, Thomas. They're going to hell. A hell of their own making. One of irrelevance." I turned and faced him. "It's time. We made our entrance." Thomas on my arm, me on his. The cameras were blinding. The entire press corps was there. They didn't know why they were there, not really. They just knew the president was attending the launch of a new, multi-billion-dollar foundation by the orphan heiress. I smiled. I shook hands. I was the perfect host. And then, at 8 p.m., the doors to the ballroom opened again. And they walked in. Richard and Eleanor Wallace. Alani had arranged it perfectly. Their lawyers had told them it was a private press conference to sign the agreement. A quiet affair. They were not dressed for a gala. They were in the only suits they had left. The rumpled, worn clothes they had been wearing when their accounts were frozen. Eleanor's, perfect. Hair was flat. Richard's face was a gray, sweaty mess. They walked into a room of 1,000 people in black tie. The music, a string quartet, slowly faded. Everyone turned and stared. I saw Cypher, trailing behind them, looking like a stunned, pathetic animal. They froze at the door, their faces a mask of pure, unadulterated horror. They were exposed. I smiled, a wide, bright, welcoming smile. I picked up a champagne flute. "Please, everyone," I called out, my voice ringing in the sudden silence. "Welcome our guests of honor, Mr. and Mrs. Wallace, and Cypher. Thank you so much for coming." A spotlight, one I had paid for, hit them, trapped them in its beam. They had two choices: run and prove their guilt, or walk into the cage I had built for them. They walked. It was the longest, most humiliating walk of their lives. 1,000 pairs of eyes watched them, the whispers starting like a hiss of snakes. A waiter, who I had paid a very large bonus, offered them champagne. Eleanor, on instinct, reached for it. "Oh no, I'm sorry," the waiter said, pulling it back. "My mistake. These are for guests." The humiliation was so thick, I could taste it. I had them escorted, not to a table, but to 3 simple, hardback chairs placed at the side of the main stage. In front of everyone, like prisoners at a show trial, they sat. They had no choice. The marshals, in tuxedos, stood by the exits. I let them sit there. I let them bake in it. For 30 minutes. While the party resumed around them, the whispers now a roar. They were the circus. Then at 8:30, the lights dimmed. I walked onto the stage. "Good evening," I said. The room went silent. "My name is Trinity Vance. Happy 25th birthday to me." A polite, warm applause. Most of you know my story. Or, you know the version of it that was sold to the press. The ungrateful foster child. Then, the orphan heiress. Tonight, I'd like to tell you the truth. A massive screen lit up behind me. You see, I was raised by the Wallace family, who are here tonight. I gestured to them. The spotlight hit them again. Eleanor flinched. They told me I was a charity case, that they had saved me from nothing, that I was nothing. In fact, just a few weeks ago, as they were throwing me out of their house, Eleanor Wallace called me. What was it? Oh, yes. I pressed a button on my remote, and her voice, sharp and ugly, filled the entire ballroom. You ungrateful little thing. You are nothing without us. You are a line item in our charity budget. The gasp from the crowd was a physical force. People stood up. Eleanor screamed. No, that's illegal. Is it? I asked, my voice calm. Is it illegal, Eleanor? Or just true? I turned back to the crowd. But that's just a misunderstanding, right? Let me show you what managing my life looked like. The screen changed. It was a scan from her logs. Trinity, 18. Scholarship secured. Convinced her to defer. Cost. 1 speech about family. Savings. $280,000. Tuition. I didn't defer my scholarship, I said, my voice tight. She stole it. Another click. Trinity, 20. Showed interest in local art class. Accidentally spilled bleach on her portfolio. Risk of outside influence neutralized. She didn't just manage my money, I said, my voice shaking with a cold fury. She managed me. She managed my hopes. She managed my future. She kept me small. She kept me a prisoner. But why? Why go to all this trouble? I looked right at them. Richard Wallace was openly weeping, his head in his hands. Because, I said, they were living a lie. They told me my mother, Martha Vance, was a worthless addict who died at my birth. I gestured to Alara, who stood up. This is Alara. She was my mother's nurse. Because my mother didn't die at my birth. She lived until I was 17. She died, alone in a hospital. Not as a worthless addict, but as a genius. The screen changed. The patent. XA221B. My mother, I said, my voice soaring, was the innovator who created the shielding for the battery that is probably in your pocket right now. And the Wallaces. Richard Wallace, he wasn't a business guru. He was a parasite. He and his wife stole my mother's company, stole her royalties, and stole her daughter, all to fund a life they were too inadequate to build for themselves. The room was in an uproar. They told me she didn't love me. They told me I was abandoned. I pulled a piece of paper from the podium, a copy of one of the letters. This is a letter they intercepted. Just one of hundreds. I read it. My dearest Trinity, happy 17th birthday. I saw a girl in the hall today with dark hair like yours. I wonder if you have a first boyfriend. I pray they are kind. I hope you get this one. I hope you know I am fighting. I am fighting to see you. I looked up, the tears hot on my face, but I didn't wipe them. They let her die, I whispered, thinking I had forgotten her, thinking I didn't love her. I looked at Eleanor. She was just gone, a hollow shell. And when I found out, when the man I loved, Thomas Winfield, finally found me and showed me the truth, they tried to destroy him too. They tried to destroy the president for helping me. They tried to make one last deal. I turned to the press corps, their cameras flashing. Their deal was simple. They would publicly apologize to Thomas and the president if I dropped the criminal charges. If I let them go. The crowd hissed. And I have decided to accept their terms. A collective, shocked gasp. Thomas's hand on the table clenched into a fist. I will not be pursuing criminal charges, I said, my voice ringing with authority. Richard Wallace looked up, a tiny, disgusting flicker of hope in his eyes. I will not become a jailer, I said, echoing my mother's words. I will not spend my life in a prison of hate. I paused. I let the silence hang. Because, you see, prison would be an escape for them. It would be an end. And I am not finished. I clicked the remote. The screen changed. Martha Vance Foundation v. R&E Wallace. Civil action no. 22 to 109. Damages sought. $4,200,000,000. As of 1 hour ago, I said, my voice like ice. My foundation filed a civil suit against Richard and Eleanor Wallace for 9 years of patent theft, fraud, and mismanagement. We are not asking for some of it back. We are taking all of it back. Every cent they spent, every meal they ate, every bottle of champagne they drank, on my mother's name. They will not go to jail. They will go to work. They will spend the rest of their pathetic, empty lives paying back what they stole, until they have nothing. They will be nothing. Just as they tried to make me. The room was dead silent. I turned my body, my full attention, to the three of them. And now, as per our agreement, I pointed to the empty microphone at the center of the stage. My apology. They didn't move. They were frozen. Now, I commanded. It was Cypher who broke first. He stood up, shaking, and half-dragged, half-pulled his parents to their feet. They stumbled up the stairs. They looked small. They were just old, terrified, mean-spirited thieves. They stood at the microphone. Eleanor was shaking so hard she couldn't speak. Mr. Wallace, I said, my voice soft. Tell them. He looked at me, his eyes begging. I just stared back, my face a mask of cold, hard porcelain. He croaked. We apologize. To whom? I prompted. To Thomas Winfield, he gasped, looking at Thomas, who was now standing, his face like thunder. We lied. We lied about everything. He is a good man. He saved her. And, I said, and to the president, he choked out, looking at Adam, who just stared back, his face unreadable. We fabricated the story. It was an abuse of our power, not his. We are sorry. Eleanor just sobbed, a high, thin animal sound. And, I said, one last time, my voice a whisper. You forgot someone. Richard looked at me, his face collapsing. We to Martha. Vance, we. He couldn't say it. It's okay, I said, stepping forward, taking the microphone from him. You don't have to. She can't hear you. But I can. I stood in front of them. You are done, I said, just for them. You are ghosts. Your names will be stripped from every building. Your friends will abandon you. You will have no money, no home, and no power. You will just be. And every day, for the rest of your lives, you will wake up and know. I won. I turned back to the crowd. Security, I called out. Please, show our guests of honor the door. They didn't even protest. The marshals, no, the security guards, walked them off the stage, out of the ballroom, and out of my life. The room was silent for a count of 5. Then, Thomas started clapping. Then Alara. Then the president. And then the entire room, 1,000 people, was on its feet, the applause a deafening, crashing wave of triumph. It was a roar. I stood in the light, my tears finally falling. Free. I was at last free. The applause was a living thing. It washed over me, a wave of validation and release that I felt in my bones. I looked at Thomas, who was walking onto the stage, his eyes shining. He didn't hug me. He didn't kiss me. He just took my hand, raised it in the air like a champion, and turned to the crowd. The roar was deafening. President Adam was standing, clapping, a broad, genuine smile on his face. He'd been vindicated. Ilara was weeping, her hands clasped, tears of joy streaming down her face. That night was the end of their story, and the beginning of mine. The days and weeks after the gala were quiet, and that quiet was the sound of my victory. The civil suit was a formality. It was over in a week. The Wallaces, with no money for their high-powered lawyers, had to use a court-appointed attorney. They didn't have a defense. They were the defense's Exhibit A. The judge, seeing the video seeing the original patent, seeing the logs Eleanor kept, he didn't just award me the $4.2 billion. He added punitive damages. And in a move that made Alani actually cheer in the courtroom, he ordered the immediate liquidation of every trust and foundation they had ever put their name on, with all proceeds going to my mother's new foundation. He didn't just take away their money. He took away their legacy. The news cycle was brutal. The Wallaces, who had been pillars of society, were now a national punchline. A cautionary tale. I saw a picture of them, months later, in a gossip magazine. They were. I barely recognized them. They were in a discount grocery store. Eleanor was in a cheap tracksuit, her hair gray and thin. Richard looked like a ghost. But the worst part for them was what happened to Cypher. Cypher, whose entire life had been a lie paid for by me, tried to sue me. He claimed he was a victim, too, and deserved a piece of my inheritance. The judge threw it out in less than 5 minutes and sanctioned him for filing a frivolous lawsuit. The last I heard, he was working a landscaping job. He was, finally, getting his hands dirty. They weren't in prison. But they were, as I'd promised, nothing. They were irrelevant. Ghosts. And me. I wasn't just surviving. I was building. I took my mother's company, Vance Innovations, and I poured my heart into it. I found her old notes, her other ideas, brilliant, world-changing ideas she'd never had a chance to pursue. I wasn't just a line item. I was my mother's daughter. I was an innovator. The Martha Vance Foundation for Innovation wasn't just a name. We started funding scholarships for girls in STEM. We opened clinics in low-income neighborhoods, in my mother's name. We launched a special grant for foster children who wanted to go to college. I made sure that for every one person the Wallaces tried to bury, I would lift up 1,000. Thomas, my Thomas. He was cleared. The president, in a very public press conference, apologized to him for the political theater he'd been subjected to and announced he was being promoted. He was no longer just chief counsel. He was one of Adam's most trusted and most public advisors. But his most important job was me. He moved out of his apartment and into the penthouse, which, he always joked, was a bit much. We weren't just a couple. We were a team. He'd sit on the floor of my new office, my mother's old office, which I had reclaimed, while I scribbled equations on a whiteboard, and he'd just watch me with that same look of awe. "What?" I'd ask, embarrassed. "I'm just watching," he'd say. "I'm watching Martha Vance's daughter change the world. It's my favorite thing to do." We were married a year later, not in a grand ballroom, but in the hospital garden where my mother had sat with Ilara. Ilara was there, and President Adam walked me down the aisle. It's a strange life. I went from having nothing, to having everything, to having nothing again, to finally understanding what everything meant. It wasn't the money. It wasn't the jets. It was this. It was sitting on a sofa in a home that was mine, with my head in my husband's lap. It was knowing Ilara was in the guest room, telling our daughter, Martha, her name is Martha, a story. It was knowing that the work I did every day mattered. The Wallaces had tried to build their lives on top of me. They tried to bury me. They just didn't realize. I was a seed. I found peace with the past. I'll never get those years back. I'll never get to meet my mother. But I get to be her legacy. I get to live the life she fought for me to have. The Wallaces. I don't even think about them. They are not in a prison of my making. They are in the one they built for themselves, brick by brick, lie by lie. I am free. And to all of you, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to my story. I know so many of you have felt small, have felt overlooked or underestimated. You felt like a line item in someone else's story. Please, please know your own worth. Know that you are the main character of your own life. And sometimes, the bravest, most powerful thing you can do is not to destroy your enemies, but to simply outlive them, to outbuild them, to live so well, so fully, and so beautifully that they become nothing but a faint, pathetic shadow. Thank you all so much for coming. This community has been a light in so many dark times. If you liked this story, please hit that subscribe button, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and leave a comment below. What was the one moment that hit you the hardest? I read all of them. I really do. And I promise, I have so many more stories to tell. Would you like me to share the story of what happened when Cypher Wallace tried to show up at my new office, asking for a job?